Hi, I'm Phyllis from southernfrugal.com. Today we're going to make a very large coconut cake, and this is a recipe that really was kind of handed down from the 1950s. And it's a recipe that you would probably want to make if you were having like a family gathering or going to a church social where you take covered dish and you were bringing a dessert, because it makes a very large cake. And I just remember these well from the 1950s. My mother used to make them, and so did my grandmother. They're delicious. So now let me just say a word about the cake itself. The cake is going to be a layer cake, a 3-layer cake. Is just a plain yellow cake. It doesn't have coconut flavoring in it, because really the coconut flavoring is imitation anyway, and I really don't think they had that flavoring in the 1950s. But even if they did, my mother nor my grandmother didn't ever use it. They made it a plain yellow layer cake. Alright, so we're ready to get started. Now, this cake does not freeze well, so you need to be aware of that. Alright, so we're going to start out with 1/2 cup of softened butter, and to that we're going to add 2 1/4 cups of just regular sugar. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my vanilla in now too, which is 2 teaspoons. I'm just going to put it right in there. And also I'm going to go ahead and put my salt in with this mixture. So it's 1 teaspoon of just regular table salt. Now, and on the vanilla, you want to make sure you're using pure vanilla extract. It'll make your cake taste really, really good. Alright, so I'm going to put the mixer in this and mix this up just a little bit. I'm just using a regular hand mixer. So we're just going to leave the camera on while I do this. So you do want to just get it mixed up just a little bit. Now we're going to add 6 large eggs. Now these are not extra large, and they're not small, they're not medium, they're just large eggs. Now I wanted to say something about that before we go on. Now when you're making a cake recipe, first of all you want to make sure you're using a recipe that's been tried out by somebody. In other words, I don't know if y'all have done this, but I certainly have. Got a recipe out of a cookbook or something and tried it and it didn't turn out. And so you want to make sure it's a recipe that's been, somebody tried it out and it worked. You know what I'm saying? So I know this recipe works. Actually, this is just kind of my recipe really. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add 6 large eggs. Don't get the extra large, because that'll put too many eggs in it. It won't turn out exactly right. So you want to use 6 large eggs. And what I'm going to do is I've already cracked the eggs and put them all in a bowl, and I'm going to try to add them one at a time to this mixture. Now I'm going to leave the camera on while I do this, so it'll be a little noisy. Alright, here we go. Okay, so we've got all 6 eggs in there. So I'm just going to stir the sides down just a little bit. Now I'm going to beat it longer, because what you want to try to do is get your sugar dissolved in this mixture. And so it doesn't matter how long you beat it. Just beat it long enough that it kind of stands up. You know, it gets kind of fluffy. So I'm going to cut the camera off of that because we'll be beating this probably 2 or 3 minutes longer. So we'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and I beat that really about 2 minutes, but let me move up closer. I want to show you what it looks like. Kind of like whipped cream, really. And the reason for the long beating time is you want to get that sugar dissolved in those eggs. Now, the next thing we're going to do is add the flour, which is going to be 3 cups. And just a word about the flour, you want to sift it and then measure it. And I actually just sift it again, and that will make the mixing a lot easier. But the reason you sift it first is because flour tends to pack together in the bag, and so you want an accurate measurement. So the best thing to do is sift it and then measure it. So again, this is 3 cups of all-purpose flour. Now I use White Lily all-purpose flour. There it is. Well, there it is. Now you can certainly use cake flour, but whatever flour you use, just sift it and then measure it. And I'm also going to use 1½ cups of heavy whipping cream. 1½ cups. So what we're going to do is add 1/3 of the flour, then we're going to add a little bit of the whipping cream, another 1/3 of the flour, and the rest of the whipping cream. And then the last thing we add is going to be flour. So you want to begin with flour and end with flour. Now to this flour, I'm just going to whisk in 4 tablespoons of baking powder. Now, baking powder, not baking soda, but baking powder. Okay, so I'm just going to dump that in right on top and just whisk it around a little bit in the flour. Now you can sift it together if you sift it the second time, and that would probably be better. I just really didn't do that this time. Sometimes I do that. All right, so we got it mixed in. All right, now just using a spatula, I'm going to put in about 1/3 of the flour and just mix that around with my spatula. Now we are going to put the mixer back in it right at the end, but you don't want to do a whole lot of mixing once you start adding the flour, because that will make your cake tough, because it develops the gluten in the flour, and that's what makes cakes tough. And of course the gluten is what makes bread good, makes the texture of bread good. So, but it doesn't work so well with cakes. All right, now we're going to go ahead and add half of this whipping cream. And still just mixing with your spatula. Yeah, this makes a very rich 3-layer coconut cake. And the icing is going to be the egg white icing. It's not going to be the kind made with confectionery sugar. Yeah, because I don't remember my mother ever having confectionery sugar, or my grandmother. Maybe they did, I just don't ever remember seeing it in the 1950s. Okay, now we're ready for the 1 more 1/3 of the flour. Again, just mix that in with your spatula. And I'll just tell you this now too. You want to preheat the oven to 350 degrees, and these layers should be done in 30-35 minutes, depending on your oven. It might even take a little longer or a little less. But the way you'll know they're done is you put a toothpick down in the middle of them and see if it comes out clean. Or you just put your hand on the layer and see if it springs back. If it does, you know it's done. Now I have a very small oven, because we did the oven, redid this kitchen when we were downsizing, and we might have downsized a little too much on the oven, because up until we did that I had a big oven and I had no problem, you know, cooking a 3-layer cake. But now I have to put 1 layer on one shelf and 2 on the other shelf. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and add the rest of the heavy whipping cream. And I did take that out of the freezer, so it's not really at room temperature, but it's not just super cold. So I just mix that in. Yeah, this makes a great cake to have when you have company. And the thing is, it doesn't keep really well. I mean, the longest you can keep is probably about 3 days, and you do have to put it in the refrigerator. But when it looks the prettiest is right after you make it. That's when the icing looks so pretty. All right, we're going to go with the rest of the flour now. Again, still just using the spatula, mixing that in. Now, when you sift the flour that second time, it really causes many less lumps in the cake when you're mixing it. It makes it much easier to mix in. Okay, now we're ready to put that mixer back in it for just a little bit. Let me get my stuff cleaned out of the way here so I've got room to work. Okay, here we go. Almost ready. Okay, that's it. That's all you need. Put those in the sink. Okay, we're ready to dump these into our pie pans now. With my pie pans, it's slung all over the back of my cabinet there, and on my shirt a little bit. Anyway, so we're now ready to put this in the pans, and what you want to do is try to divide it out equally among the 3 pans. So these pans are lined with wax paper. First I put a little bit of Crisco in them, a thin coat, then I put wax paper in there, then I grease it again and grease it up on the sides too, then I dust them with a little bit of flour. All right, let me back y'all off so you can see this. Okay, there we go. Now you can see at least 2 of the pans anyway. So again, this is a 3-layer cake. So I'm going to try to get it right. If I don't, I can dip some out of one and into another, no problem. And these are 9-inch cake pans. And I think I did a video on the cake pans, all these pans. I got these from Amazon. In fact, I'll leave a link down below on where I got these. They're stainless steel cake pans, not aluminum, even though I personally think aluminum cans make baked cakes better. But I don't like the health warnings and all that to do with aluminum pans. Make sure I get all that out. And now you want to just spread that out evenly in your pans. And just get it in there just as even as you can, the equal amounts in each one. And I think this looks about right. All right, now with a thick batter like this, it doesn't really do any good to shake it to try to get any bubbles out. And that's what we were taught in home ec. You take the cake pan and go like that, because the batters, of course, were much thinner. This is a very thick batter, so there's not really going to be any bubbles that come out when you do that. All right, so we're ready to stick these in the oven, and when they get done and they get cooled, we'll be back and make the icing. Okay, we are back and ready to make our icing. You can see the 3 layers are done, and I'm actually letting them cool in the pan because I've got wax paper on the bottom of them, so no problem with them coming out. And I actually think when you let them cool in the pan, they actually stay more moist for some reason. Anyway, I wanted to show you this. We're making, the icing is going to be the egg white icing, and I'm going to need 2 packs of the Bird's Eye. It's a flake coconut that's frozen. You can find that in your freezer case in most grocery stores, and for sure they have it in Walmart. So we're going to use 2 packs of that, so that would be 12 ounces of flake coconut. All right, but we're not going to use that until the very last. All right, so here we go. To make this egg white icing, you're going to need 1 cup of sugar in a saucepan, and you're going to need 4 tablespoons of water. That'll be about 1/3 of a cup. And we're going to need 1/2 cup of light corn syrup, 1/2 cup. All right, so we're going to dump that in. I'm going to go ahead and turn my burner up really on medium high. Get that corn syrup all in there. Just stir that around just a little bit. And then we're going to put the lid on it until it comes to a really good rolling boil. All right, so that's going to take a few minutes. Now, while that syrup really is what it is cooking, I have got 4 egg whites in this bowl. You want to make sure your bowl has absolutely no grease in it, so I don't recommend that you beat these egg whites in a bowl that's plastic. You'd really need a glass bowl or a pot, some kind of cooking pot will also work. So it's 4 egg whites, and I'm going to beat those until they form just kind of soft peaks. Anyway, we'll be back. Okay, I've got my egg whites beaten up into soft peaks, and you put the lid on this syrup that's boiling because the steam will help prevent any crystallizing happening on the edge of the pot. So once it starts boiling rapidly, you want to take that lid off. And then we're going to let it boil until it comes up to 242 degrees, or really so that if you drop some in cold water, you can pick it up and the little ball will hold its shape. Now I'm just going to check it, see where it is right now. Okay, it's just a little over 200 degrees right now, so it hadn't got far to go. I'm going to use my little digital thermometer simply because I trust it more. I got this at Walmart, and I'm just going to clip it on the side here and just barely put it down in there, but not touching the bottom. There we go. And we'll see. Okay, it's saying it's already 232 degrees, 239, and it's reached 242 that quick. Okay, hush. I have to cut this thing off. I'm not real proficient using this little thermometer. All right, so we want to quickly take it off the burner, and we're going to actually gently, with a little fine little stream, pour it into our egg whites as we're beating them. Now, this is not something you want a child to help you with, just because this syrup is very, very hot. I also dumped my coconut out so it'll be easier to get to when I start assembling the cake. All right, so you want to beat your egg whites on high, and we're going to pour a little fine stream of this hot syrup in there, and that's going to actually cook the egg whites. So here we go. Let's stir some of this down from the side. There went that spoon. Stir it down from the side. Now it can get up on that side and, go ahead and get hard, which is what some of that has done. So you have to beat it really on high speed. Okay, here we go again. Alright, it really gets hard fast. Alright, so we are ready to put this on our cake now. You're going to have some that sticks on the side. I've actually got some of my towels up there in the back of the stove. But no problem. It's just the nature of this type of icing. It's hot, so the syrup actually cooks the egg whites. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put in, look, it cut on my vanilla there too. Yeah, it's a little messy, I'll have to tell you, it is. So I'm going to put just about a teaspoon in there. And just mix that around with your spoon. Alright, and clean my fingers off. Yeah, so just mix that around with your spoon. See how it's stuck all on the side? Yeah, you have to be really, really careful when you're making this icing. And it's sort of like that 7-minute icing that you make in a double boiler. Alright, I'm going to move y'all over to this side so you can see, and we're going to ice this cake, so hold on. Okay, we are ready to ice this cake now. Now, can you see that my layer is not really even? So I'm going to, I've got another layer that's not even and then one that is even. So I'm going to position them so that everything then looks even. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is put a big blob right down on the cake. You can, if you want to, at this point, go ahead and ice the bottom of it, that bottom layer on the sides. Just get that out of the way right to start with. Now, Paula Deen, I remember watching her make some kind of a cake that she iced, and she put wax paper under the cake all around the edges so that when she pulled it off, the cake looked clean. But when I do that, the icing comes off with the wax paper, so I stopped doing that. Yeah, that didn't work so well for me. And of course, this icing is not as sweet as an icing would be with confectionery sugar. Okay, so now we're ready to put some coconut on here. And I put a whole bunch on mine, whole bunch, because it's going to mash down once you put that layer on. We'll just go ahead and put some on that bottom side too, the bottom outside edge while we're here. Now you can certainly do this with one pack of that coconut if you don't like coconut that well. But then I guess if you don't like coconut, you wouldn't be making a coconut cake, right? Now just mash it in sort of on the sides. Now this just works really, really well with the egg white icing. It really does. Okay, now what I'm going to do is go ahead and pick this layer up, and on this layer, this little side here was as small or not as high as this side, so I'm going to position that on the higher side at the bottom. So before I do that, what I want to do, find my bottom again, is I'm going to put some icing on this just a little bit, kind of smear it around. Just a little bit. Okay, so here's my high side and here's my low side. So what I'm going to do is flip it on there like that. And did I get that wrong? Yes, I did. So no problem. I'm just going to turn it around. There we go. Okay, so now we're ready for the icing on this layer. Yeah, it's pretty messy trying to ice these cakes, but they're worth it in the end. They are definitely worth it. So I'm just smearing it down on the side now. Yeah, this icing sticks really well to the layers. So for lunch, we're going to have a salad and a big piece of this cake. Okay, so now we've got that on. Let's put a little more on there, on the top of it. It's going to be a very tall cake. Now my next layer is pretty well even, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and put some frosting on here, just a little bit. Smear that around. Just smear it around. I've still got it on the wire rack. And then I'm going to put more coconut all in here. Lots of coconut. Then I'm going to flip this out. Hope I don't drop it. There we go. Okay. Now we're ready to finish icing this top layer. Put everything I got right in the middle of it, or almost everything. Yeah, this is a tall cake and it almost doesn't even fit into my little cake holder thing. So I'm going to do the sides. Make sure you get the whole thing covered. I told y'all this was messy. See? It's really messy. But it is so worth it. I can already smell that coconut. It smells delicious. Get plenty of that icing on there. All you need on the sides is just enough icing so the coconut will stick to it. Now I might tell you that the cake is still just ever the slightest bit warm, which doesn't matter a bit when it's the egg white icing. Ready for the rest of that coconut now. Alright, here we go. Just spread it out. I like to just actually mash it down a bit so it soaks up in that icing. And then I just hold it in my hand and get any up that's falling down there. Plop it up on the side too. I remember my mother making this cake at Easter, and she would, back then they didn't have the fresh flaked coconut. You just got it in a bag, and it was that coarser type of coconut. And she would make little nest out of, color the coconut green, some of it, and make 3 little nests on top so it would look like a little grass nest. And then she would put 3 little jelly beans in there, and sometimes, some years, she would get those little marshmallow little biddies, little marshmallow rabbits, and put them on it. And Mama didn't make many cakes, but she did make that one, and it was so good. And of course, being little kids, we just loved it because of the little chickens and the little jelly beans on it. Anyway, this is the same recipe you would use, really. It's a yellow cake, homemade, of course. All right, there it is. All right, I got to clean up. I can't even cut my camera off. Okay, I'm going to clean up this area and I'll show you what everything looks like. So be back in just a minute. Okay, here's what the cake looks like, all iced. Got the coconut all over it. Now, again, this cake doesn't freeze well, I don't think, anyway. I mean, you might try it, but it really is better if you don't freeze it. Now, we'll be putting it in the refrigerator because it's got egg white icing on it. All right, and of course the egg whites are cooked by the super hot syrup. But anyway, I'm not going to cut that now because we've got to eat our lunch first, so maybe I'll take a thumbnail of it once we cut it. All right, see y'all next time. Okay, I wanted to show you what the cake looked like after we cut it. Here's the piece, very, very moist. All right. And there it is. We'll see y'all next time.